Welcome to the PranaTech podcast. Karandeep Bhardwaj from the UK. Awesome
Thank
guy.
you.
You
I'm
know,
fine.
honestly,
Hey,
I've learned
how are
about
you today?
him a lot over the years because, his content is phenomenal. So I would say that Karan has given a lot of good information to me. I've reached out to him multiple times and he's given me very good direction about quality assurance, regulatory affairs, women, men, this, that, family issues, whatever. Karandeep is in the house. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you today?
Good, good, man. So how's your life, man? Tell me about what's going on.
There's a lot going on, I suppose, in the regulatory world, and those who've especially been following it. There's been layoffs in the FDA, and then all of a sudden there's been reinstatements in the FDA. So one minute I'm thinking, hey, Europe's going to be the market that everyone goes to first again, and it seems that the FDA realised the mistake and changed their mind. If anyone has been following UK politics as well, the NHS England, the National Health Service, has recently decided to abolish that and build something. So again, with every form of chaos that's happening, there's benefits to happen, there's disadvantages. So I think everyone should just look for the cloud with a silver lining, is my view.
Yeah, yeah. Silver Linings Playbook. Good movie, by the way. For people who haven't seen it. I love the movie. Love the characters. I'm one of them, but not really, right? So are you. The part. So I would say, man, like, what is going on in the environment? Tell me, like, a lot of dynamics right now with the FDA. In terms of what's going on with geopolitics, whatnot. What are you seeing though? What's your honest opinion?
My view is, especially when it comes to the medical world, there's always going to be people, sadly, people are always going to be getting ill. There's always going to be a need for medical devices, etc. So when these things take place, it's not the case of people are scrapping their ideas. It's just going to put a spanner in the works and maybe increase timelines, but people are still going on ahead. You'll find, especially with the medtech community, especially medtech CEOs who are veterans in this industry, they've pretty much seen it all, and especially the guys that have been around for decades. They've seen so many different changes, and it's kind of like they're not too fussed with these obstacles. They see, okay, there's a bit of a problem. Let's just work around it. So I don't think there's a bit of a shake-up in the industry as such. Everything is going forward. But a lot of the focus is so much on software, medical device, and AI, which is a lot of places that I work in. But we need to bear in mind, it's 80 to 90% of medical devices are still your traditional medical devices, things like your pacemakers, defibrillators, surgical equipment. It's just the fact that software and AI is considered sexy, is the new thing, and it's the one that most people are talking about. But majority of the medical device market for the time being, and I can predict for the next few decades too, is your general everyday devices. And a lot of people fail to remember that.
Interesting. So use a lot of buzzwords there. And like, I think a lot of people in our industry, like MedTech, med devices, biologic therapeutics, blah, 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 life sciences, right? AI. What does that mean to people? People use AI, but what does it mean to you? Like, how do you actually implement AI in a way where you can execute it, but actually, I would say, meaning, make it meaningful. How do you make it meaningful? Tell me.
Yeah, so AI is a very loose term. So the way that I describe it is, a lot of companies out there will go out and claim AI, and it's the most basic of algorithms. So AI is basically, think of it like this: the way AI really comes in useful is basically the boring everyday admin tasks that humans do. AI is really good at that. But if you put something complex for AI, it will fall apart. AI is very, very good at what it can do and what you programmed it to do. But if you put it in an environment where it's outside of that, it completely falls apart. Machine learning, of course, is a deeper layer of that. So think of it like the neurons in your brain. It's constantly learning and it's changing its way. That's what you need to do. But the thing is, the terms AI and machine learning are so loose. So for those in the audience who really want to see how AI is going to change the medtech world, life sciences, etc., at this moment in time, primarily due to regulations and technological advancements, AI is merely an assistance tool. So I'm going to repeat that again. AI is an assistance tool. So if you see
Yeah.
a software medical device, an example being radiology is one space where they use AI to maybe detect certain abnormalities, there is still a physician at the other end. It's just that the AI is saying, hey, have you seen this space here? Or, this thing doesn't look particularly right. Maybe dig deeper into this. The physician is still at the other side. The guy is still signing off. So traditionally, when you went to a physician 20 years ago, that physician is still there. AI is merely there to assist them, and that's the stage that we're at. If anyone remembers the famous movie like iRobot and how everything's going to change, and if you watch things in
Yeah.
Hollywood, I mean, the world can potentially go like that, but due to strict regulations, we're decades away
Yeah.
from that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's nothing to be concerned about. You're still going to have a physician, you're still going to have real humans to talk to. The AI is there just to assist them.
Got it. Got it. So I'm gonna call you Detective Spooner from now on. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Great movie, by the way. I love that movie, but I don't know how long ago that movie was actually produced or aired, but like, it made sense, right? In terms of like what something or someone or some being or what do you want to call it can do. But in your sense of, I would say, regulatory barriers or, vice versa, what is the, I would say, the red tape, quote unquote, right now that you would think is red tape or not red tape? How would you kind of define that?
So I want to really use the red tape. I mean, and we've kind of discussed this in past. It's kind of this is the one mistake I see companies doing a lot of, and probably what I'm going to say right now is they don't know what their device is, and companies get really offended when I say that. And the way I reframe it goes, "What's your
Don't be
intended use statement?"
offended, please. Don't be offended. Sorry.
It's what's your intended use statement, and they're completely baffled. And I'm like, who's your intended patient population? What are the indications that you're going for? What are the contraindications? What are the potential risks? They don't even know what the device is. They're like, hey, we've created this medical device. It can save 50 different conditions. This is how we're going to get on the market. Okay, brilliant. But you only have the clinical data for two conditions. So you can only work with two conditions. But think of it like this: the intended use statement effectively is like the backbone. It's effectively like the spine of your medical device. If you don't have a strong spine, everything's just going to fall apart because your clinical trials, your data, your risk is all built on that. So generally, what I say to these companies is just figure out what your device is. Of course, and this is basically notorious with the people that get into medtech for the first time. So you may have a CEO, founder, or investor who's maybe been, I don't know, consumer electronics or general healthcare who just enters this heavily regulated space and says, we're going to be the only solution out of the market that does X, Y, Z. You have to go back to the drawing board and see what's possible. And it's all driven by what the clinical data is out there. And this is what I often say to companies. It's like, just figure out what your device is and what you want to do. Then go and work with a specialized consultant who knows this space, who can then trim it down and tell you what's possible. Now, that's not to say that you must remove every single claim or everything like that. What I recommend for these companies is take the iterative approach, saying, okay, at this moment in time, you can maybe go for two indications. Go out for a couple of years on the market, get some real world data, clinical data, and then you can have a version 2 or version 3, and you can slowly start adding these things in. It's not that you have to scrap everything, it's just you have to trim it down at first, get yourself to market, gather the data, and then you improve it as you go along.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. But I kind of know what you do, but like maybe tell the audience what exactly you do. Like why are you in this industry? Like what made you actually go towards life sciences, and like why are you here right now? Like what is the point of you being here? What is your purpose? Karandeep Singh Bhardwaj. Sorry.
Yes, sure. So effectively, my educational background was in pharmaceuticals. So I always knew when I entered college that I wanted to do something in the life sciences space. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And it was sort of my second and third year of college where I sort of started to get this exposure into what regulatory affairs was all about, what quality is all about. And I thought, this is a bit of me. It just so happened the first job I got out of university, like with any student, you're broke, you're just trying to gather a bit of money and you take the first role that you can find. Effectively, I use the term beggars can't be choosers. And it just happened to be medical devices. And I was like, wow, this place is so diverse. You got pacemakers, defibrillators, glasses, contact
Yeah.
lenses. So compared to pharma, where pharma is just drugs, and I'm not knocking pharma, medical devices is extremely diverse. And I thought, you know what? This is an industry that I can go in, at least if I don't like a certain type of product type, and go work in another one there. So effectively, I was one of the rare ones that straight out of college went into quality and regulatory affairs effectively. And in terms of what I do is not just quality and regulatory affairs, it's also strategy for a company as well. Because I could be very good at quality and regulatory, but there's also other aspects. There's a clinical aspect of it. There's a health economic aspect of it as well. What's the point in going out and making a medical device that passes regulatory, spending millions of dollars on quality and regulatory, and realizing there's no market for your device? You better do that assessment and to start that's basic business. So there's all these other factors that you have to do as well. And also another thing I like to do is I like to create content on LinkedIn as well, where I teach people quality and regulatory in a very simple, easy to understand. So if you're a CEO of a company, you don't care about building a quality management system. You don't care about the different modules. All you want to know, okay, what is a quality management system? Why do I need it? And how do I build it effectively? And then you bring in experts like me to do that for you. All you want is just that top line. And I feel as though that's what's missing in the market. If you want to know quality and regulatory, there's so much jargon out there, like I've been throwing out today. It just completely goes over your mind. All people want is a simple 1 to 2 minute video. This is a 510K, this is a CE mark, this is a process, and this is how you go about it. That's it.
Got it, got it. So I know you're pretty well versed I would say the FDA, also within EU MDR. What is, I would say, I know it's a tough question, but you probably know how to answer it very well because I know you. But what is it? Just paint a picture for me. Venn diagram. Where would you talk about this a lot. Where do you go first? Where do you go second? As someone with unbiased opinion, where would you go first? UK or it's EU MDR, UK, whatever it is, or US? Like, how does it work? If I come to you as a startup founder saying, "Hey, Karandeep, I have this cool idea. It's going to make people, see again." You know, I think people need to see again anyway. But that's none of my business. But now it's your business. So if you're your business, you tell me. If I come to you with a semi, I would say intended use, how would you approach me as a potential client?
So the first question I'll probably ask you is which part of the world do you feel as though your product would have the most impact? Where is the condition that you're treating, and where do you see it's going to be most impactful? Is it going to be a remote part of Africa or Asia, for example, this kind of technology doesn't exist and is going to make a big impact? Is it going to be something that you can have an existing great infrastructure like you have in the West, i.e. in the US and the EU, and you can maybe bring that into hospitals? So the first thing is, where are you going to make this first impact? The second, of course, like with any founder and CEO of any business, you want to actually go out and make money. So my unbiased opinion here is, if we just scrap regulatory for now for this conversation, is generally speaking, I see a lot more money floating around in the US when it comes to investments, when it comes to accelerators, when it comes to startups. Personally, I believe it's just the culture of the US when it comes to entrepreneurship and growing business, etc. People tend to be a lot more open. But I'm finding there's a lot more money floating around within the US. So generally speaking, my view here is just from a monetary perspective, it tends to be in your favor to go to the US. The second part of that, of course, is unlike the US, in the EU, you just have the CE mark. It doesn't matter if there's a predicate device or not, everyone's pretty much going under the same pathway. Whereas with the US, you have what's known as the 510K and the de novo. So for the listeners today who don't know what that is, the 510K process is basically there's something similar on the market, which they call a predicate device that's similar to your device. And you get somewhat of an expedited pathway, looking at around about 6 months to get onto the US market. Now, generally speaking, if you're a startup company and you have investors and VCs, you generally have milestones. So when it comes down to these milestones, if you can get onto the 510K program and get on the market within 6 months, this is not necessarily 6 months start to finish. This is 6 months of you submitting that application to the FDA. The process behind that can take a lot longer. But effectively, if you can get onto the US market within 6 months, and then the EU is probably telling you 12 months, but you can meet that milestone 6 months further before you get your next round of funding, it kind of makes sense for you to get that 510K. Also, for the listeners today, a small trick, and some people in the space may see it. If you go onto the FDA website, there's what's known as a 510K database. So every device that's had an FDA clearance of 510K, you can see who the company is, the device, the intended use, etc. is very clear. Now, you would see devices on there that have never seen the light of day in the US. Why do companies do that? This doesn't mean the companies gone bankrupt or they didn't sell. In some cases, it's easier to get the 510K and go to other parts of the world, i.e. Saudi Arabia, India, certain parts of Asia, etc. It's easier to just get the US 510K, have no intention of selling in the US, and then go straight to those markets than it is to enter directly into them. So the answer to your question is basically yes. Strictly speaking, in a lot of cases, the US can be quicker. Number two is you may have easy access to funding. And then number three, by getting the quickest pathway, you can then target other jurisdictions. And that doesn't necessarily mean that you remove the EU. It just means EU maybe becomes your second choice rather than your first choice. So you still go onto the EU market, but it will be your second choice, whereas in the past, it used to be the other way around. Where people went to Europe first, did all the testing there, and went to the US. Now the ball's gone to the other side of the court.
Interesting. So how does it work, like with the UK or EU MDR? Like, what is the biggest, like, 3 to 5 differences that you see? Like, why would someone go to the EU before the US? Like, what's the difference? Tell me.
Number one could be your existing clinical data. So effectively, depending on the device that you have, the clinical data must be representative of the target population of the jurisdiction you're trying to enter. So if your clinical data has been based predominantly on an EU population, you can actually use that data to get into the EU. Whereas if it's done predominantly on an EU audience, the US FDA may turn around and say, hey, we're expecting you to have clinical trials on a US-based audience. That's number one, is your clinical data, where is it based on? Number two, of course, is your geography and location. If you're based somewhere in Europe, it kind of makes sense for you to establish your business there, build your contacts there. And if you've been in that industry, you probably have your network set up there. Not to say that you don't have it in the US. That's the second point as well. And then I would say number three as well, it's also there may be demands in certain countries or specific conditions which are more prevalent in the EU or certain parts of the EU in comparison to the US and vice versa. So that can also be driven. So if there's a very specialist condition that only exists in a certain part of the world, then surely that's the part of the world that you want to target. So if you have something very niche That's one thing you want to go into as well. And the other one, of course, is where your funding's coming from. So if you have something like government funding, i.e., let's just say the UK government has a scheme out there and they're funding you, they're going to want you to do business in that particular part of the world. So it could also be
Very
driven by your funding
true.
too,
Yeah.
and where the money's coming from.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. The last point really, really hit hard. I would say it makes sense, right? Where the taxpayer money's going. Look, I'm not gonna get into that. It's none of my business. But guess what? I'm curious. Okay, leave me alone. The point is that you're laughing too. You get what I'm saying. But like I would say, like what are the biggest growth markets you're seeing in terms of like countries? Like I had an India event last like 2 weeks ago. I think you were there as well. I'm big on India. It's because of not only the volume of people, but I would say the growth, right? And look, I would say there's 1.4 billion people in India, right? And one third of the population, so about 500 million people, have cell phones. What if you double that, right? What if you double it to 1 billion? That means they can work through their phone. That's the way I think. What do you think about India's growth economy and like where do you see it going and what's your predictions?
Yeah, definitely. I think in Asia, developments move a lot quicker in comparison to the Western world. So being that I'm from Punjab as well, when I go back every 5 years, the level of development is crazy. I go back to India and I'm seeing brand new highways and new technology, and then 5G. Like I'll be in the middle of the fields, in the middle of nowhere, and I've got 5G cell phone. I'm in the UK in a very developed place, and I can just go half an hour into the countryside. I'm struggling to get
Yeah,
2G, and it's just the
yeah,
rate of growth is a lot quicker, and the culture there is people just get on with it. Of course, in India, sadly, there's a lot of poverty, but people just get on. They don't complain, hey, my tools are broken or this. They're just like, okay, great, this is what I have. And they somehow make it happen. So the level of growth, especially in the Asia as well, is a lot quicker. And number two is well, education. Again, being Indians ourselves, we know the importance of education, particularly in that culture where your parents drive you to go out and get an education. And despite their poverty, people still find a way to go out and go to college and get the books that they need and resources. And even with minimal resourcing, the amount of people that are coming out of India who are from poor backgrounds but somehow built an education and then go out to change the world. That's one thing. So I think at this moment, Asia is very much in a boom, and that's the way things are currently going as well. And also because Asia's developing, if you look at places like the UK and EU, they're very developed countries, but Asia is still in that development phase. So at this moment in time, they're still in the baby phases. And particularly in India as well, it's because I don't know the exact date, but I know up until a few years ago, everything was just classed as drugs, whether it was device or not, it was just under drugs. Then they started separating it and then treating things as devices. Also, from a manufacturing point of view as well, a lot of parts of the world, whether that's furniture, equipment, electronics, they're all developed and manufactured in India. So it makes sense that if you're manufacturing the goods there, why not sell them there? You've already got the manufacturing facilities, you've got the people there, sell it in the country, and it'll be far cheaper than importing it. If they can make something in India for $10, put a bit of profit and sell it for $20, because by the time it maybe goes to somewhere like the US, it'll be like 10 to 20x that. But if they
yeah,
can sell it in country for 10x less, it makes a lot more sense and still be profitable.
yeah. I mean, I don't know how familiar you are with Bollywood, but "Made in India" is an old song, right? And that's the whole point of what Modi's saying, right? He's saying let's make it in India, let's sell in India, let's export, right? Why not? What's wrong with that? Population's there, infrastructure is like so, and like I think for me at least, I would say quality, right? You're a big part of that too. That's where the issue is, in my opinion. I don't know what you think about it, but in India, it's like I want things to be made there, but you can't cut corners. I'm not saying everyone does, but the point is that like safety and efficacy, right? So can you comment on that about India and like what the issues are or what the advantages or disadvantages are of India?
Yeah, effectively. I remember working with an OEM manufacturer, and there was an OEM manufacturing house in India. He used to get the goods made in the UK and then sent back. And then I remember speaking to one of the managers. I'm like, they're a manufacturing facility. Why don't they just make it in India? Why are they building in the UK and then paying all that cost? And he goes, well, just to say made in UK, whether it's a higher quality or not, has the perception that it will be of a higher quality and people buy it. So I think necessarily what's happening here is because in India, there's a lot of emphasis on speed. And then when you have speed, then people start cutting on quality. But I think with strict regulations in place, strict controls in place, I don't think the quality in India will be inferior. It's just the fact that the demand for goods in India is so high that they have to
Yeah.
compromise on quality to be able to keep up with the demand. But is it possible that they can make high quality goods? Yes. It's just the demand is making them do otherwise.
Yeah, it's definitely a conundrum, but yeah, you're right. There's got to be, I would say, a more efficient manner to get goods out there, medical goods, obviously, medical products, medical devices, therapeutics, in a way where people aren't getting hurt, right? People are actually getting something out of it without going back to the hospital or to any clinic or whatever it is, right? But like, how do people get in touch with you? Like, what is your kind of, I would say, like, how do people even like get to know you? And like, let's say, like, I'm gonna reach out to you. Karandeep, like, I'm curious, I need a consultant. Like, how do people even like contact you? What do you like? How do you outreach? What's your sales outreach? What do you do?
Sure. I mean, for me, it's predominantly LinkedIn. I'm very active on there. I post quite regular as well. So again, if you're just interested in quality and regulatory, I make free content day in, day out. If you just want to know what this stuff is all about, the typical mistakes. So if you just follow me on LinkedIn as well. I also run a podcast like yourself as well called the MedTech podcast. So that's not necessarily quality and regulatory. It's just me interviewing founders in the industry. What are they all about? What do they do? How they build their business? So just from a knowledge point of view, if you want to follow me. But the best way to reach out is me on LinkedIn. If you do need any support for any services, let me know. And again, I'm very blunt with companies. I will not say that I can take on sometimes regulatory project, but if I can't see that project getting through, I'm not going to take it on because I'm not greedy for money. I'm not just going to say, hey, give me that project, and 6 months I got not economically viable. I get paid regardless. But for me, I want medical devices to make an impact on the world. I support companies, but then I also do other aspects of it as well, where I just generally tell them, look, I don't think this is possible, and I don't think this is a great idea. And then basically, I would just let them know that from the get go.
Yeah, I think you have to draw the line somewhere because, like, there are people out there that want to kind of cut corners, but like our industry, we got to focus on the people, right? That's the whole point. Money will come as long as you focus on the people first, right? I don't focus on the money either because I know if I focus on the people first and what the impact is, the money will follow as a function, right? And I think that's what you're trying to say as well. And let's say it. Let's have a take-home message for the crowd. Actually, what I'm curious. A lot of people reach out to me saying like, "Hey, Karandeep, how did you start your business? Why did you do it? And like, how do you even get into this business, right? Me and you, I would say we're kind of in the same boat, right? But we're not fresh off, but we're there, right? We're there. But how do you get to that point? How do you make that first leap? And what is your, I would say, take-home statement saying, look, I know the industry, I know what I'm doing. How do I take that jump? What would you, I would say, indicate, or I'm not going to say intended use, but how would you inspire someone to actually get to the point of saying, look, I want to kind of start my own business. I'm confident. I'm, want to take a chance. What would you say?
Well, the safest way of doing it is kind of like what I did. I held down a full-time job and then part-time business. That way you can decide is the business path for you. You still have your full-time job to go back to. So generally that's it. Go out and try it because it's not for everyone, because anyone who runs a business knows you are the HR, you are the sales developer, you are every single role wrapped in one. Weekends, forget about them. This concept of a weekend, like we were discussing offline earlier, doesn't exist. You're working all the time. You're going to be going to bed and thinking, oh, did I send this email? Did I do this, etc. It's going to be so many different thoughts. Again, if you enjoy that challenge, that's great. But then my view here is go out and try it. Go and try it in a small way. Maybe that's a part-time role or just something. Or there's other ways around it too. And this is what I've seen companies do is they'll hold a full-time job and maybe work as a bit of a co-founder, maybe as a bit of support. So again, you don't have to be a full-time entrepreneur. It can be something that you can do. You can maybe sit on board panels. But until you go out and actually try it, you're not going to realize whether it's for you. So my view is don't burn every single bridge and just go straight into it because the failure rates are so high, although that some people do get success from that. But just go out and try it part-time and think, hey, this is a bit of me. This is what I can do. Then you can make that transition. But my view here is don't burn every single bridge and just go straight head first into it. Go out and give it a try. And if it works for you, then that's it. Go for it.
Yeah, that's great. Karandeep Singh Bhardwaj. I love saying your name. I don't know why. I think you're hitting a sixer every time. I don't know why. I just, I want to say your name out loud, but I've really enjoyed your content, man. I read it a lot, and you've actually taught me a lot, actually, and I actually use your content on LinkedIn for my clients. So thank you for your time today, and thank you for your content, and for the people who are listening, please follow Karandeep. Awesome content, awesome person, and better cricketer, I think. I don't know, but yeah, thanks for your
We'll have
time,
to
man.
play
I
and see. I'm
appreciate
not a
it.
such a computer. Thank you very much. I'll see you later.
Yeah, thank you.